It is 6:26 in the morning. Um, Lately, the last 9 months I've been unemployed. I've been getting more and more depressed, losing hope, you know, because I just had an interview last week with a gas station. I didn't even get to see the hiring manager. She wasn't there. But I answered a manager's questions, a different person, and I was told that there's interviews going on until today, Monday, the 15th. So I'm not sure if I should call the store, the gas station, whatever, and just say, can I come in today and meet the hiring manager and actually do a proper interview and actually, be considered instead of just having notes being taken and those notes being the final say so of whether I continue to have money for food or clothes or basic necessities. I don't know how I'm gonna afford this car that I want, but I know I'm gonna make it happen. That's what matters, is I will make it happen. I have my driver's permit. I am looking forward to getting my license, doing the road test, and having my own personal vehicle with the insurance completely covered, being able to afford gas. I'm always thinking about quitting smoking weed every day, and because I still live with my parents, that's the biggest excuse I have to not quit smoking. Deconstructing the patriarchal framework. Beyond nature and inevitability. The assertion that patriarchy represents a natural or inevitable social order remains one of the most persistent and consequential assumptions in human history. This essay will critically deconstruct this claim by examining patriarchy not as an organic development, but as a sophisticated socio-political system engineered to consolidate power and control resources. By analyzing its historical origins, mechanisms of enforcement, and adaptive strategies, we can move beyond moralistic condemnation to a clear-eyed understanding of how such systems are built and maintained. This analysis argues that patriarchy is a human invention, a flawed and often brutal operating system for society, and that recognizing its constructed nature is the first step toward envisioning and building more equitable alternatives. Historical construction, the material foundations of power. A critical examination of history reveals that patriarchal structures coincide with specific material shifts in human organization, contradicting the notion of a timeless biological destiny. The agricultural revolution and property rights. The transition from nomadic hunter-gatherer societies to settled agriculture was a pivotal moment. The cultivation of land introduced the novel concept of heritable property. This created a pressing need to control female sexuality to ensure verifiable paternity and legitimate lineage for inheritance. This was not a natural impulse, but an economic strategy. The subsequent codification of laws around marriage, adultery, and women as legal property, evident in ancient legal codes like Hammurabi's, demonstrates a conscious institutionalization of this control, not its natural emergence. The monopolization of force and authority. As societies grew more complex, power became centralized in military, political, and religious institutions that were almost exclusively male dominated. This monopoly on physical and authoritative force was then legitimized through ideology. For instance, the philosophical works of Aristotle, which framed women as deformed males and natural subordinates, provided an intellectual justification for their exclusion from public life. This represents a key feedback loop. Power creates the ideology that justifies its own existence. My neighbor is leaving. Mechanisms of enforcement. Ideology as a tool of control. A critical lens must identify how patriarchal systems are maintained beyond mere coercion. Their resilience lies in their ability to become internalized as common sense or divine law. Religion and cosmology. Many major world religions incorporated patriarchal norms into their foundational texts and doctrines, effectively elevating social roles to the status of divine mandate. Stories like the creation of Eve from Adam's rib, Genesis, or directives for female submission in Pauline epistles, just an example, served to remove the system from the realm of human criticism. To question patriarchy was to question God or the natural order of the cosmos, a powerful deterrent against dissent. The myth of the separate spheres. The Industrial Revolution further refined patriarchal logic by creating a powerful new ideology. By moving economic production outside the home, it spawned the doctrine of separate spheres: the public, masculine world of paid work, reason, and politics, and the private, feminine world of domesticity, emotion, and unpaid care work. This was framed as a complementary arrangement, but its critical function was to economically disenfranchise women by rendering their essential labor invisible and valueless within a capitalist framework that equates value with monetary exchange. Counterarguments and critical analysis. A robust critical analysis must engage with counterarguments. The most common is the biologistic claim that patriarchy is a natural outcome of sexual dimorphism and male physical strength. The flaw in the biological determinism argument. While biological differences exist, they do not dictate specific social arrangements. This theory fails to explain the vast diversity of gender relations across cultures and history, including matrilineal and relatively egalitarian societies. It commits the naturalistic fallacy, assuming that what is, or what is perceived to be, must be what ought to be. Furthermore, in the modern world, physical strength is largely irrelevant to social and economic power, which is derived from law, finance, and intellectual capital, yet patriarchal disparities persist. This indicates that the system is now sustained by inertia and institutional design, not biological necessity. Patriarchy's cost to men. A critical thinking approach also recognizes that systemic analysis is not synonymous with blame of individual men. Patriarchy imposes a rigid and often damaging set of expectations on men as well, such as the imperative to be primary breadwinners, to suppress emotion, and to embrace aggression. This demonstrates that the system ultimately functions to preserve a hierarchy of power itself, which can harm individuals across the gender spectrum, even as it privileges men as a class. Adaptation and resistance, the system's evolution. A critical understanding of patriarchy acknowledges that it is not a static monolith, but a dynamic system that adapts to challenges. Modern manifestations. The system has successfully migrated into digital spaces. Online harassment, algorithmic bias, and the alt-right pipeline, red pilling, here comes my mother, I think, represent modern tools for enforcing traditional gender norms and silencing dissent. The underlying logic remains the control of narrative and space. In just a few minutes, because I'm filming a video. The role of resistance. The continued existence of fierce resistance, from first wave suffragettes to contemporary intersectional feminism, is itself powerful evidence against patriarchy's inevitability. Resistance movements are the system's stress tests, revealing its fractures and contradictions. They force the system to adapt or reform, proving that its structure is subject to human agency. Conclusion: the power of deconstruction. The critical thinking exercise of deconstructing patriarchy yields a powerful conclusion. What is often presented as natural and immutable is, in fact, a constructed system with a traceable history and identifiable mechanisms of maintenance. This shift in perspective is profoundly empowering. It moves the problem from an unchangeable fact of life to a flawed human invention. If patriarchy was built, it can be unbuilt. If its rules were written, they can be rewritten. The goal is not to simply invert the hierarchy, but to question the very architecture of hierarchical power based on gender. By applying critical thought to the structures we inhabit, we move from passive acceptance to active participation in designing a more just and equitable future. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day. And with peace and love, stay safe. Take care of yourself.